All right, gang, welcome in. It's Hexy. Hey, we do a little late night after action review, or well, not necessarily after action, but we'll call it a mid action review of an oldie called Overlord, which I got it here on my internet. McMurray's going to give us a rundown here in just a second. Here, I'm going to turn the screen over to him. He's hiding there. He's there. Don't you worry. But this is Overlord. It came from Conflict Games. The designer was John Hill. The artist for this thing was Rich Banner. It's called Overlord, the Normandy Campaign. And this thing was done in 1973. And our buddy up in Michigan, Rich Champion, sent this game down here, and I passed it on to McMurray. And this thing was right up McMurray's alley. And this game actually looks pretty good for something that's, Jesus, that's like, thing was made 11 years after I was born. So let me get McMurray on here. And he's got his camera sitting right over top of it. I'm going to give him solo layout, and he's going to tell you all how the thing plays and what's going on. And McMurray, how you doing this evening, brother?
I'm doing pretty good. So yeah, it is right up my alley. It's a single map. It's not a full map either. It's a little shorter in the east-west dimension that you're looking at here. It's not, I don't think it's the full 33 inches. It's just under 24. I think it's like almost a 22 by 20. I don't know. Anyways, long story short, very cool. Really simple rule book. Yeah, there we go. And then combat tables, it's kind of cool. It's got two different combat tables. One, as you can see, is for June. The other one's for July and August, which really simulates how rough stuff was getting on the Germans at that point in time.
I'm sorry, but that rule book resembled a monster game series of rules.
Yes, it did. This monster is known as Outstanding. It did also come with a little terrain explanation sheet with some examples and whatnot, and then some clarifications. But yeah, so that's basically all the paperwork that came in here. This little guy was in there too, but that's just kind of like almost like back of a box sort of things. But yep. Actually, I think that's out of Kasserine Pass because it says Overlord will be released by Conflict Games May 1. So it's probably out of Kasserine Pass. I think that's the other one that was in the box. Thank you again. So what we got, we just wrapped up the last turn in June. So as you guys all know, Operation Overlord launched in the pre-dawn hours of June 6, 1944. I just wrapped up. Each of the turns is about 3 days. So I just wrapped up turn 8, which is the June 27 turn. So the next turn will be July 1st. It's a pretty cool. I'm going to move this real fast just to kind of give you guys an idea of how they laid this out. Sorry for the shake. Let's do that. So you've got, for your allies and then the Germans as well, just kind of an arrival schedule that's all out on these double length pieces of paper, which are outstanding. You can see where it's got the dates that they come in. For the allies, they just come in based on, if you've got like a British division right here, they'll come in on one of the British beaches. If you've got the unmarked or American divisions, and then there's some that are Canadian divisions. There's a French division right here, Polish division. There's a Canadian division down here at the bottom. Yeah, and then for the Germans, everything comes in on specific roads, right? Which is kind of cool. And then around the edge of the table, you've got various road entrances coming onto the table, starting with 1 down here and just kind of moving through 6 all the way up here along that northern coast of France. And that's how the Germans come in. One really cool thing that I've noticed with older games, not necessarily so much with newer games, I think Academy or Ares, the one that makes the really beautiful, they're kind of Euro games, but it's like zone control games. They have one for the French and Indian War, the Revolution, stuff like that. They've got a very similar like starting system where the starting areas for the units are on the map. So like I said, this does start on June 6th. The Allies have landed. You don't have to worry about getting onto the table or getting onto the beaches. So you've got Allied deployment zones, like here's the 82nd, the 101st. We've got Utah Beach over here, right on that southern end of the Cotentin Peninsula, Omaha, and you can see where we've got Big Red already landed on Utah Beach. The 4th ID is already over. Or I'm sorry, on Omaha is where Big Red landed, and then the 4th ID is on Utah, just inland. It's kind of cool that they give you that I guess that's how they minorly simulate that Utah was more unopposed, is they let you get all the way into the Bocage country at start, as opposed to on Omaha, you're sitting right on the beach. And then you've got various British and Canadian divisions down here along the British and Canadian beaches, as well as always, you've got some paratroopers or special service over here on the eastern side of this river that never ends well. Never ends well. They had to take out the Mirville battery. They had to go over there, but never ends well for those guys. I know in Battle for Normandy, Todd sent them all for a swim. They do start here, so I didn't have to worry about that, but they got pushed back over the river pretty quickly.
And I failed that in Day of Days also. I couldn't keep that side of the canal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's rough. You get a lot of German reinforcements pouring in from the east over here. But kind of looking at things that everybody looks at, the 101st did take Carentan on basically, I think, the first turn on June 6th, or the second turn, which is through June 9th. Man, it was bloody trying to take the you can't see it because it's covered by counters, but Con is 2 hexes, one on either side of this river. So one here that the British 6th division currently has, and then on the opposite side of the river, it's being held by the 12th SS Panzer.
And what's the scale of this map? It's
not super duper well printed, or it's not super duper stated, I don't think necessarily.
5 or 10 miles maybe.
It's big. It's big.
Older rule set might not have it in there, but
yeah, that is one of the things I do enjoy about SCS and everything. That's always on the first page in order to look or to find out how to figure that out. But it's big, right? Because you've got Cherbourg is not even all the way in the corner of the map up here. It's up here, but you can get all the way up to Cotentin Peninsula, and then it goes all the way over past Tourville over on this side too, on the east. But then in terms of going south, if you know where like Argenton and Avranches is and Falaise, those are all on here. Falaise is super duper on here. So is Granville. If you ever heard of the Granville raid, that's right here on the French coast. But yeah, Carentan was taken on basically the first or second turn. I took this side of Con relatively quickly. That was a meat grinder. And Bayeux right here, or Bayeux, however you pronounce it, sorry, was just a monster for the Allies to take. Every turn you've got 8 points of naval gunfire, and then through June you've got 6 points of air power as well.
So do the rivers surrounding the town there, Bayeux, do they create havoc for the attackers?
Yeah, it makes the attacker go down half. So the only way I was able to take it was this 59th British Infantry Division right here is sitting on a peninsula. Essentially, it's sitting between these two rivers. It's not a peninsula, but it's between these two rivers. And I had to get some serious combat factors in here in order to start attacking Bayeux. Also, interesting thing about this game, unlike a lot of games where you see where if you're in a built-up area, your defense is doubled, it's tripled in here.
Okay.
So, which, and again,
and tripled because of the river and the town?
Yeah, so any of the attacking units from these 5 hexes were halved.
They're halved, okay, and the defenders tripled.
Tripled, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so again, until I could get somebody right here just attacking on even footing, even with 8 points of naval gunfire on it, it was just a bear.
Well, if you think about it, that actually can be somewhat of a realistic side note there, because taking an urban area like that.
Exactly. And that's what I was thinking is, even I think what wound up being in there was the 352nd Static Division, which is historically what was right on, this section of beach here, especially around Omaha. Okay. And so they have it start back here in its divisional assembly area. But I put them into Bayeux, and it's one of those, man, okay, I can see how a bunch of guys who are used to static fortifications and putting stuff down and just holding, how that would be really just not a good day, man. That would suck.
Well, when I left you last night, that road going to the west from Bayeux, yes. I'm pretty sure there were no German units sitting on that highway that you had it open for the Allies. What happened?
Well, I had this German division hopped across. I think this is part of the Duyf River right here. But anyways, hopped across this river, got over there just to put pressure and hold the 101st in Carrington where it was. I had another German division up here, if you recall, kind of blocking this breakout towards St. Lo, but they got schwacked.
That's
The
right,
Germans have
armor up. Okay, all right, I remember.
Yeah, the Germans have really reinforced, and they're just piling in over here, trying to wrap this up and just contain, which they're going to need to do. They need to get some of these units that are coming onto the table over here to block these roads. Because I didn't realize this until yesterday night. We were playing, just kind of hanging out, and I was playing this. The Allies just have to get 9 divisions worth of troops off either the eastern or the southern table edge. Another thing in here is roads are only a quarter point of movement. So it's not hard. This guy right here, this 29th Infantry Division, if only it was still full, could probably almost get off there if it's not for this 341st Infantry Division that's down here for the Germans. Now, they are sitting on a hill that is also bocage. That is going to be 6 shades of unpleasant to get them out of. That's going to suck. I'm going to have to wait until, it is July now, so my air power steps up. I think I've got 12 points of air power.
So you said 9 units or 9 strength points to get off
for
the map?
9 divisions.
Okay, and Todd's asking, we have 2 questions. We're going to address the easy one first.
Okay.
What's the basic unit size?
The basic unit size is about a regiment.
Okay. Wow. So they did a large. Okay. So what's stacking then if it's regiment?
Okay. So stacking is 3 or a division. So like the 1st Infantry Division had 4 regiments in it, so it was huge. Panzer Layer has 4 regiments in it because it's huge. So those 2 can sit with 4 counters. But other than that, it's 3, which is a standard size division.
Okay. And then here comes the question. I think you and I talked about it last night. Norse wants to know. He made a comment, and you and I were talking about last night about why Cherbourg is empty. Explain what happened to Cherbourg.
Yes. So Cherbourg, I wanted to block the Cotentin Peninsula, right? And the way that you start in this game, nobody's actually in Cherbourg. You've got, I think this is 243rd, 709, and then there's 3 German divisions right here. And that's basically all you've got for the entire Cotentin Peninsula. So instead of just putting guys into Cherbourg, right? My thought for the Americans is I'm going to try and just wheel, right? Instead of cutting straight across that Cotentin Peninsula and then having to fight guys up here and guys down here. So what that turned into was when I landed and I started bringing troops on, because I think it's a little hard to see with how the light's playing on it. I can bring in troops in any of these 3 hexes for Utah Beach. So what I wound up doing is I wound up bringing them on. And Jeff, you probably remember this. The Germans had a static line of defense kind of right along here. But I wound up just overpowering the northern end of this flank. Because ultimately, what are the Germans going to do with Cherbourg? It's cool. It's a fortress city. That's awesome. But if I leave a division up here, it's not a division that's blocking an Allied breakout into France. Right? And really, if I leave one division up here, I'm going to have 1 regiment in each of these 3 hexes. So I'm going to need to leave 2 divisions up here, or 3 divisions up here. And then that's really problematic. That's right. A lot of dudes tied up in Cherbourg, which I don't really give a shit about. The fun part is, Jeff was wondering this yesterday, well, isn't that tied into victory conditions or something somehow? It really isn't. It is, however, really good. If you keep German units in Cherbourg itself, they don't suffer out of supply, which I didn't realize. I'm not saying that really would have changed anything, but I definitely thought, well, if I leave them in Cherbourg, I'm just going to cut the Cotentin, and then it'll be like, historically, where the Germans had.
The Allies, didn't they commit a lot of forces up there? Because they needed Cherbourg because they needed that port.
They needed the port, yeah.
And then they commit a lot of forces into that Cotentin Peninsula to clear that out?
To a certain degree, they did, but I think that also may have just been because this is a pretty fairly heavy troop concentration because this is where you get really close to England.
Gotcha.
But yeah, there were a lot of troops concentrated here. And I mean, if you're going to take it, you're going to have to commit an ungodly number of forces.
So this game incorporates a mechanic called isolation too, doesn't it?
Yes, which is supply. If you're isolated, you're out of supply.
What's the penalty?
Pretty much like a lot of things. Basically, everything is halved. For one interesting thing is for the Allied paratroopers, whether it's the British 6th or do they have the 6th Airborne in this game? What the hell?
British 6th over to the right of the canal, to the east of the canal, but I think they got eliminated, didn't they?
They probably did, yeah. But anyways, so if the Allied airborne troops are isolated, it just halves their movement. Everything else, I'm pretty sure it halves movement, defense, and attack. Yes. Yes, supply / isolation. Effective immediately from the instance of isolation. That's the other thing. It's not like at a phase. So if I move somebody, if I manage to move, a unit back here that then would make them isolated at the start of the next turn, they're already isolated. So then I can go attack, and it really kind of, I'm working on getting kind of a crescendo of those going. But let's see here. Oh, come on. Where does it say it? Yes, it fights both offensively and defensively and moves at half factor. So it basically just halves everything, like a lot of games.
Right. So, okay, so the supply sources here, I'm sure the supply rules are very, very basic, tracing a line.
Americans have to get to the beaches. Germans have to get to the east or the southern edge.
Okay, there's no specific hex count or?
No.
All right, and what about air and artillery as Mr. Wardrobe?
Yes, so it's kind of nice that because we're so zoomed out, we're not seeing individual, there aren't artillery counters, both of these forces did a pretty good job. Both of these, both the Germans and the Americans had like division level artillery, but most of the time, especially with the Americans, they were attached out to the regiments or combat teams, brigades, whatever you want to call them, whether you're British or American or whatever else. So because of that, there's not really artillery, like organic artillery to these units. It's just into their combat factors. What you do have is naval artillery for the Allies and air power for the Allies, right? Because the Luftwaffe is a joke at this point in time. We're putting syrup on Luftwaffles. They're not attacking anybody. So in June, the Americans, or the Americans, we're just going to call them the Americans, because most of these British driven tanks over here are American too. But anyways, the Allies have 6 points of air power through June. As the game progresses, and the Americans and the British and everybody start building airfields in France, you get more air, you get more tactical air. So like I said, in July, I'm going to get 12. So I'm going to need to find a new die. But there you go. For Naval Gunfire, you have 8 points. At any point in time, if you're within 3 hexes of a coastline, you can put 8 combat factors down on the table. So it's essentially like having a unit that's got, instead of 4 combat factors or 6 or 4, you've got 8 additional. So it's not a shift or anything like that.
You add them to the strength of the unit attacking.
Yes.
So they work combined.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. And you can only ever put 8 combat factors on any one hex. The other nice thing about air is you can allocate an air point to interdict a road, which is why I have these little blank counters. And game actually comes with a ton of blank counters, but these ones I just flip over. And basically, for every point of air that you put on a road to interdict, it costs an extra movement to get through it. Now, what I've been figuring out and doing is in combat, as combat resolves, which is kind of cool, you either run away or you die. And a lot of guys die. There's not like, oh, pull off one step or anything like that. These are all one-step counters. Stuff just melts, evaporates off the field. So what that means is, here's the explanations of what's going on. If you can't retreat, a lot of these are, as you can see, attacker eliminated is all the attackers, like the entire attacking stack is dead.
Classic games.
De-eliminated, all the defenders are dead. But then you've got this A back 1, defender back 1, defender back 2, defender back 3. Those are how many hexes they need to retreat. But if the terrain effects or whatever else put the number of movement points it would take to retreat that many hexes over the unit's movement allowance, which is this right-hand number, then the unit's destroyed. They aren't able to get away, they get destroyed, they surrender, what have you. So what I've been doing is I've been putting these, behind German units, if I can get one kind of isolated.
Gotcha.
To add
the tactician hard at work.
Yeah, well, it makes sense. Like, nobody's going to want to. You're retreating to get away from gunfire. You're not going to retreat straight into 18 flights of Typhoons shooting rockets on a road all day long. That's the dumbest thing I've heard in a long time. That's the epitome of, man, you know what? I bet your food's not that bad in American prison camps.
So how are those allied units, I'm just curious, that are sitting there, those armored units that are trying to work their way, how are they in supply?
Where?
Those armored units that had that little finger sticking in right there. You got
these guys?
Yeah. Do they is it through each other? I mean,
yes.
Okay, so supply doesn't have to be along roads, does it?
No, so you can't trace through a zone of control unless, like most things, you're tracing through a friendly unit.
Okay.
Hell no, Jeffy, we're working on the red ball, baby.
Already
started. GMC.
Okay, so
off-road, baby.
All right, looking at your casualty pile, what percentage of June 6th landing and airdropped forces are already out of the game for the Allies?
That's kind of tricky because I don't know without having a roster to sit in front of me, like, okay, here's what landed. So 79th Infantry, the U.S. 79th Infantry, if I recall correctly, the 79th, 29th, these are all guys that come in right away. The British 56th.
Definitely.
What's up?
29th is definitely.
Yeah. 79th comes in on turn 4, I'm sorry. But Canadian 3rd Division, that landed. They were destroyed trying to take Bayeux, as was the British 56th and the British 3rd. Those were all on the table to start with. They are pretty toasted. We've got elements of the British 8th Armored that started on the table. That's pretty goofed. So there's a lot of casualties. So far the U.S. has lost 3 full divisions and 1 regiment, and actually the British and Commonwealth are at the same spot, 3 full divisions and a regiment. On the German side over here, both of our static divisions in the area, the 716th and 352nd, have been completely wiped out. The 21st Panzer is just about done, which makes sense because they were the first ones thrown in. 91st Infantry, 77th Infantry, 17th Panzer Division, 77th Infantry, and 3rd Fallschirmjäger are completely wiped out. And then we've knocked out, actually, that's another static division, the 709th Infantry Division. So,
but you've had some SS up here since then, right? They're all.
Yes, I've got the 9th SS is coming up the road here towards Caen, as is the 12th SS. They're already up here. 5th Fallschirmjäger is still right in the thick of it over here. So we certainly got it. The 11th SS I had jump up here to try and block, because I was really honestly afraid that a bunch of these divisions were just going to start streaming down this road and get off the table. So I set the 12th SS up here because that's a pretty powerful formation. And we're going to try and shoestring these guys along here so that we can't just have Americans pouring through. But at the same time, look at this big old chunk.
Yeah.
I need to get this 341st Infantry Division off of these heights in the bocage And then this road is going to be a super highway.
Okay, so let's we've been going about almost a half hour. So let's just put a final question here. So
Yeah,
okay, this thing was made in 1973.
absolutely.
So would you say that, and we're gonna categorize this with easy to play games. Question one is, would this thing still qualify today as a good game if it were made today for someone to learn to hex play? And is it giving you somewhat of a feel, even while not perfectly, of how D-Day went down? Is it giving you a feel that somewhat resembles what we know about D-Day?
Yeah, so I feel like this game, if the modern, convention of the player aid was involved, this game would be the first game I'd recommend people to grab. Right? Because if this could be in slightly smaller print with this kind of stuff, basically on the flip side or a smaller chunk, that'd be about all you need. As a modern game, people would bitch up a storm about it, just because, unfortunately, no matter what it is, if it's Gauss, people are going to sit online and bitch that it's too complicated. If it's SCS or this, somebody's going to sit online and you're going to have people bitching that, oh, well, you aren't adequately, accounting for all the proper Tobruk's, right, that the 352nd had as opposed to the 716th. So this is just terrible.
It's basic. It's basic move combat with a few extra features thrown in to cover air, supply, naval.
Yes. It's got all the elements of a bigger game that's more detailed. They're just simplified down to the point where I think it's a good starter because isolation is in here. Are supply rules super complicated? No, but you have an idea that, okay, this is something that I do need to think about, right? I get the feeling that I'm playing D-Day. I get the feeling that I'm playing D-Day zoomed the hell out, right? I'm not Teddy Roosevelt Jr. here, commanding one division. This is the Ike view.
Right, right.
This is the view that FDR has.
All right. So if you had to make a decision that you weren't going to play anymore, but you were going to presume that you were going to finish the game, from what you're looking at right now, are the Allies going to win this, or are the Germans going to check them? Okay.
I think the Allies are. So the thing that you see is the Germans, towards the start of the game, they're just rushing all the available units in northern France and central France up here. So the Germans get a pretty good counterpunch right off the bat. But as we get into July and August, the Germans kind of get a division a turn or a couple regiments a turn, And
are there any alternatives for the release of earlier reinforcements from the Germans? Because we know that a few
there are.
Okay.
Let me get to that in just a second, because that is one of the cool things that's in here. As you get into later July and into August, all of a sudden the Allies, as all of this infrastructure is beefed up, they start being able to bring in 2 divisions a turn. We're starting to ramp this up. And then by the time you get to the end of August, you're actually getting replacements recycled back in. You stop getting counters. You start getting 16 factor of replacements for the last 3 turns for the Allies, which is kind of cool. Because again, you're getting replacements from June 6th to the end of the war. I think it was the 1st Infantry suffered 700% casualties. Guys are getting knocked out. Guys are getting reformed. They're getting thrown back into the line by, August. So that's kind of cool. For the Germans, yes, we're going to shift back over here to their kind of deployment. I'm trying to set this down without knocking everything out of here. So German starting deployment. These are the units that are on the table. And then all of these units, the 77th Infantry, the 3rd Fallschirmjäger, Panzer Lehr, 275th Infantry. That looks like a Panzer Grenadier, motorized Panzer 17th, or motorized infantry, I'm sorry. 267th or 265th Infantry, and then the 12th SS. Those are all, they start on the table, but Following units at start may be released for movement on June 6th only on a die roll of 1, 2, or 3. Roll for each division individually. All may move on June 9th. So by turn 2, 3 days in, they can all move. But that is interesting, and that is also one of the things that contributed to this. Because all of these, you can see there's 4 divisions down here. Woo. So you got the 265th, the 77th, the 3rd Fallschirmjäger, and the 275th. Those were all just sitting here. I failed every single one of these rolls. So that first turn, they were not able to start running up here and helping out at the base of the Cotton Peninsula. Over on this side, you've got, there's 21st Panzer. 21st Panzer can move on June 6th. Rommel was seconded, authority over 21st Panzer. He had those guys, especially Kampfgruppe Becker, charging up towards Kahn on the 6th. But then down here at the 17th Division, the 12th SS, Panzer Lehr, those 3 I managed to pass somehow. So that's how you get such staunch resistance on this side, I feel like, and the Allies were able to take a lot better of a toehold over here and in the center.
All right.
So, and that there's an option for that. It's in the rule book on the back. Where's the rules? There's the rules for what ifs. And so you can change some of the start positions. So you can send the 21st Panzer to Kahn. So it's basically if Rommel is able to deploy the Panzer forces like you wanted to right on the beach. So it'd be 21st to Kahn, Panzer Lehr to Falaise right here, which is right here. And then
Panthers or Tigers or even PZ4 sitting on the beach or they can engage targets.
Yeah. That being said, they're still going to be able to be hit by naval gunfire, which one of my favorite pictures of a Panzer IV still to this day is a Panzer IV that was engaged by 15-inch shell fire, and it's hilarious because it looks like a model that somebody sat on.
North, I agree. So
yeah,
right, guys, so there it is. There's an Overlord from old conflict games. McMurray's giving it a good run, and we got the same for he'd be the perfect one to play this. You got to love, I know that I remember looking at those counters. I think I clipped a few of them in one of the games, but they're simple. You can see the unit. It's got combat. It's got movement, and it's got the NATO symbol that really, what more do you need in these games?
Nothing.
Yeah, and it seems to play relatively easy. He's got a second one that plays along the same system, a Kazarine. I'm sure he'll get 2. We have an intention of doing SCS Ardennes here with December being in and Bulge and all that. We're working out the details on that one.
I've got 4 days until
4 days. I got to figure out where I'm going to set mine up. And I think what we're going to do with that is we're both going to play and then maybe just do every few days do a stream review. So as for myself right now, I've got I'm playing that old Gettysburg Faithful Lightning game, which I'm really enjoying. It's getting unique now. I've got Enemy Action Ardennes set up, which I'm actually enjoying that too. And I've got a Napoleonic game, the Battle of Jena from the Coming Storm. So we're going to terminate this one. I appreciate y'all coming out. Keep your YouTube open because over on Wardrobe's channel, they're going to go live here shortly with an unboxing. Him and McMurray are going to do an unboxing of a bunch of miniature stuff, I think. So, hey, gang, thanks for popping over here. We're putting this one up for some video posterity, so it'll be on the channel if you need to see it or somebody needs to see it later. And appreciate all y'all coming by and saying hey and listen to what McMurray had to say. And everybody have a great evening.